Hey, running friends. Welcome to the Wrinkled Runner podcast. I'm Sherry, the Wrinkled Runner. I'm over 50 and I love to run wherever I go, but Buffalo, New York is my home. If you are looking to start to run or you're an older runner, this podcast is especially for you, so subscribe now. I love to help people get running and keep running. Hey, running friends. Today we're going to talk about being an older runner. So let's face it, our bodies change as we age, and that can impact how we train and recover and even how we think about running. But there are ways to adapt and thrive and keep enjoying this sport for the long haul, even as we age. So let's start with the obvious. As we get older, our bodies just aren't the same as when we were in our 20s and 30s. And as I'm on the bottom edge of the hill towards 60, even in our 40s, things are different for me. You might notice that recovery takes longer. It's harder to build muscle, which I can definitely attest to. And maybe our endurance isn't quite what it used to be. And again, that is something that I am finding probably in the last year or so, that my endurance is not what it used to be. But aging doesn't mean that you can't be a strong and a happy runner. You just have to train smarter. So here are a few adjustments that I have found helpful. One of them was cutting back on the mileage, if you feel that that is something that might be helpful to you. I started finding that 6 days a week started to be too much, both physically and mentally. And I found this out during marathon training one year, and once I got back to 5 days, I was able to train much better. When I was running 6 days a week, I was starting to dread my runs, and so then I kept putting them off and not doing them. It would be 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I still hadn't run yet. And so I was finding myself mentally not doing well with that. And I also was very fatigued in my legs and just all the way around. And so I decided that I definitely needed an extra rest day. And that kind of leads into prioritizing recovery. So recovery is something that I talk about a lot, and it's very, very important. It's part of training. So sleep, stretching, rest days, all the things that when I started running 20 years ago, I didn't really pay that much attention to. I really need to now that I am older. Sleep is, especially if you're a menopausal woman like I am. My husband, he's going to be 60 this year, and he still can fall asleep as soon as he hits the pillow. But I can lay awake for hours before I fall asleep, or sometimes I'll fall asleep quickly, but then I wake up in the middle of the night, and then I'm up for 2, 3, 4 hours, depending on when I wake up. And if I don't have anywhere to be in the morning, I fall back asleep, and then I'm a zombie for the rest of the day. So it's easy for people to say you need to get enough sleep, but for a lot of us, it's not that we're not trying to get enough sleep, it's just that we can't. And so I have found some things like white noise has helped immensely. I also make sure the room is very, very cool, and that has definitely changed. That's definitely a difference from before I hit menopause, before I wanted it to be as warm and as cozy as possible. But heat is now the enemy, and because I live in a 125-year-old house, the heating is very, very weird. So we have radiators, and the second floor where our bedroom is it's really like a sauna. It does not cool off at night, even though we turn the heat way down. So our first floor, it can be very cool, but our second floor is very hot. So even in Buffalo, where some of the nights are in the single digits, I will be cracking open a window and I have the ceiling fan on. So sleep is something that a lot of times we don't think is important to running, but it really does rank right up there with fueling correctly and getting miles in. that is when the body recovers, and our adaptations that we want to get better at running, those happen during recovery, just like strength training. And a lot of times we as runners kind of ignore that concept, where the bodybuilders and the people who do a lot of strength training, they have that down. They understand the recovery days. We tend to not be so great at that, but it really is very important. So strength training, like I was just mentioning, as I've gotten older, has really been a game changer for me. Building muscle helps protect your joints and improve your running efficiency. And even 20 minutes a couple of times a week can make a big difference, because we do start to lose our ability to build muscle and lose the muscle that we have as we age. So we naturally lose muscle mass, which is called sarcopenia, and that can begin as early as in our 30s, and it accelerates a lot after 50, and I have definitely found that to be true. So loss of muscle not only affects running performance, but it can also affect everyday activities like climbing stairs or carrying groceries. So having a strength training program built into our training is important, not just for running, but also for life. And as we run, our muscles absorb the impact and help stabilize our joints. And without enough muscle strength, we rely more on our tendons and ligaments and bones to handle that load, and that can lead to more injuries. So incorporating regular strength training helps build and maintain the muscle mass that we need to stay injury-free. It also improves bone density, which is essential as we age. Running is weight bearing, and it actually is really good for bone health, but strength exercises, particularly those involving resistance or weights, will take that to the next level. And stronger bones means a lower risk of fractures, obviously, which for older athletes, or just for older people in general, that becomes a concern as we age. Another benefit is balance and stability. As we get older, our balance tends to decline, which can increase the risk of falls both on and off the road. So strength training, especially exercises that target the core and lower body, improves our stability and helps us stay upright and confident during our runs. As we age, we also need to think about our metabolism and body composition. As muscle mass decreases, our metabolism slows down, and that makes it easier to gain fat even if our diet hasn't changed. And especially for those of us who are in menopause or perimenopause, we definitely see that happening. I see that happening more and more every year, and so I have to keep that strength training up so that my metabolism is revved up, and it also increases muscle mass, which helps maintain a healthy body weight and composition. As we age, and if our metabolism is slowing down because we're not keeping that muscle mass up, the calorie need for our day is not as high as when we were younger. So if that's something that is frustrating for you, then that is something to keep in mind, and just another great reason to strength train. But also an overlooked benefit for a lot of people is the mental confidence that strength training can bring. When you feel strong, you move through the world a lot more confidently, because you feel capable and you feel ready to tackle the challenges, whether it's a hilly course or simply getting off the floor playing with the grandkids. Or even a few weeks ago, we had our bathroom redone, and we have these really big, enormous tiles that we put in the bathroom on the walls and on the floor. And we had a designer help us do all the renovations in our house, and we overbought these really big tiles. And she ended up needing some tiles for another house that she's the designer for. And so she was going to buy back some of the tiles. They came two to a package, and it was just her and I, and she was kind of concerned about, would I be able to lift these tiles and get them into her the back of her car. with her help. She was worried that she was going to have to bring some guy over to help do that. And I said, I'm pretty strong. I think I'll be good. And we were able to lift those tiles and toss them in the back of her car, no problem. And I was confident that I was going to be able to do that because I do strength train on a regular basis. Now, in addition to being a running coach, I'm also a personal trainer. So it's part of my job to do strength training. So for other people, that is something that you may have to really put into practice and put into your schedule to strength train, but it really, really is very important. Just 2 or 3 strength sessions per week, being consistent with that will make a big difference in how you feel and perform as a runner. And if you are older and you don't even know where to start, I will put some resources in the show notes, but also if you're at a gym or there's tons of online personal trainers that you can go to and get a plan for, which is more personal than just like taking something off of YouTube or off the internet. So let's switch gears a bit and we're going to talk about injuries. And I am noticing, like I said before, especially this past year, that I'm experiencing more discomfort in my glutes and my hips than in the past. It's not an injury, but I am very aware of my glutes after a few miles. So I've incorporated more hip and glute work to my strength training routine because prevention is definitely key when it comes to those kinds of things. So I recommend doing a dynamic warm-up. So don't just roll out of bed and start running. Do some leg swings, hip circles, mobility drills to get your body ready. Now, for most of us who are older, rolling out of bed and just going out for a run is a lot harder than it used to be anyway. So if we have something specific that we're doing before we go out there, that stiffness that we get when we're sleeping and getting out of bed can go away if we are strategic about what we're doing before we hit the road. Also, cool down properly. I'm finding I need to foam roll and stretch after my runs in order to feel good later in the day. That will help to get rid of some of the soreness that you might feel, and instead of wanting to plop on the couch for an afternoon nap, if you do some stretching and do some foam rolling, if you're able to do foam rolling, there are some contraindications about that, especially for those of us who are older, which is another reason why I suggest getting together with a personal trainer, just so that you know whether that's something that is safe for you to do or not. But even some stretches, just getting those muscles to feel better, especially towards the end of the day. Also, listen to your body. If something feels off, don't ignore it, because taking a few days off of running now is better than being sidelined for weeks if you actually get an injury or stress fracture or something like that. If you're having any issues, I do recommend working with a physical therapist that is well versed in how to deal with runners. So if you're injured, or even if you just have a few niggles here and there that can turn into injuries, consulting with a physical therapist can be really, really helpful to getting you back on the road injury-free. Now, a lot of times we just ignore it because we're not quite sure if we can even do that or not. But if you check your insurance, if you call a physical therapist, they can find out for you if they are able to take you on and if your insurance will pay for that. Because if there are some exercises that you can do to get out of that cycle, that will just get you out on the road quicker and also help you not have so many niggles and so many things going on. So one of the things that's hardest to accept as we get older is that we may not be as fast as we once were. Although there are plenty of older runners that I'm seeing out there who are challenging that. But if you've been running for a long time, like I've been running for 20 years, there probably is going to be some slowing down. So here's some of the things that I've learned as that has been happening. So redefine success. Instead of focusing solely on pace or PRs, I try to celebrate consistency, running pain-free, or just getting outside for a beautiful run. When the sun is shining, especially here in February in Buffalo, our winter has been absolutely horrific. Just ice, lots of ice. And so it's been very dangerous to get out there. But yesterday I was able to do an 8-mile run because it got warm enough that even the ice turned to slush for a few hours. And my feet were frozen. They were soaking wet. I mean, I stepped in so many icy puddles when I was running, but the sun was shining for enough time that it actually felt like a pretty nice run. So I was able to get out there, and that was something that I celebrated instead of worrying about pacing or getting up to a particular pace by mile or doing any speed work. That has been absolutely impossible this winter. You cannot go fast. You have to be very, very cognizant of where you're putting your feet and how fast you're going. So instead of worrying about a PR for my next marathon, I am just celebrating that I can get out there and train and do it. So finding joy in the process is something that I have learned to appreciate a lot more as I've gotten older. So sometimes it's just about the fresh air, hearing your footsteps, the sense of accomplishment after a run. Yesterday I felt very accomplished because I have not been able to get out for a longer run in a very, very long time. There is a product that I do recommend if you are dealing with snow and ice, and that is Yak Tracks, and I will link that up in the show notes as well. That has been wonderful. I've had them for a few years now, and I can strap those on and get a pretty good run in no matter what's going on the sidewalks when I use those. And even though I'm not going to get any speed work done in them, it does allow me to get outside when a lot of runners can't, or they're running in the road, which I'm not a huge fan of. Another thing we might have to be better at as we get older is staying motivated. Getting outside for a run can sink to the bottom of our list, especially if we have other things that we have to do or other people that we have to see or take care of. But signing up for a race or writing down a running goal can help immensely in getting out for a run. I usually put my running clothes on the dresser, ready to go for the next day. And even if I'm not going anywhere, but will be running later in the day, say I'm running with somebody else or running with my husband after work, I'll put on those running clothes when I'm ready for the day instead of deciding that I'll change later, because a lot of times if I'm ready to go and I just have to throw my sneakers on, that's going to get me out the door a lot easier than if I have to change and, put my hair in a ponytail and all that stuff. So like we talked about before, our metabolism slows down. So our approach to fueling does need to change a little bit. And as we get older, the priority switches a bit from a bunch of carbs as runners to we still need carbs, but also keeping in mind that protein. We need to have that protein in our bodies. So focusing on high quality, nutrient dense foods is key. Be cognizant of empty calories and prioritize foods that have vitamins and minerals and things that your body needs. For younger runners, they can handle and process carbs more efficiently, but we can't. So we tend to have a slower glucose metabolism, which means our blood sugar can spike and crashes are also more likely. So complex carbs like whole grains, sweet potatoes, fruits, making those a big part of our diet instead of, cake, for example, is a good strategy to have. So things that we may have used for a quick carb boost may not be burned as quickly or utilized as well. So if I'm struggling during a long run, I've been known to dip into Tim Hortons for a donut. And that's fine. And I will probably still do that as my mileage goes up as I'm marathon training. But I might not do that all the time. Instead, I might go into a convenience store to get something that might be a little better for me than that donut. So I do try to focus on carbs more on the day before a long run or on days that I run. On days that I don't run, I really up the protein and I do watch the carbs more than I used to when I was younger. So sources of protein like chicken, fish, beans, tofu, eggs, try to include those at, not all of them, but try to include some protein at every meal. Make sure you're fueling back after your runs for recovery. So the window to do so isn't as hard and fast anymore as it used to be, where I used to worry that if I didn't get a bunch of protein and replenished carbs on my ride home, say if I drove for a run, that I felt like that was gonna screw me up, because they used to talk about how, oh, you've got like 30 minutes to get all this in, but after a run or after a strength training session. But that window isn't as hard and fast anymore, but it is important to get fueled back up within a reasonable amount of time. So don't skip breakfast or lunch if that's close to after your workout window. And if you are going for a longer run, try to get some good carbs in before that. The other thing we have to also be careful of is hydration. Now, the younger generation is so much better at hydration. My grandkids prefer water over anything else. It's just so funny to me that they'll have choices of juice or water or milk or anything else, and they will want that water. Everyone in the younger generation, the generation under me, they're always carrying enormous water bottles around, and that's just part of what they do, and they just drink water all day. And I feel like when I was a kid, I mean, it's obviously an exaggeration, but I feel like I maybe took in a gallon of water a month. I never drank water. I hated water. But we need to take a cue from the water bottle group and make sure that we're hydrating. It is very important. And we can crash so hard. I can feel like I need to take a huge nap in the afternoon. And sometimes I feel like, oh, it's because I strength trained this morning, or it's because I went for a long run. But a lot of times it's because I'm not hydrated. And if I can keep in mind to stay hydrated throughout the day, then that crash does not happen, or it's not as debilitating as if I am dehydrated. So next time you're feeling like that, go get a glass of water and see if that helps. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned as I've gotten older as a runner is it isn't so much the running that has changed, it's all the things surrounding it that needed the tweaking. So if you have any older runner strategies or tips, let me know about them, because we can all work together to help make us all run until the grave, which is my goal. And also, if I didn't cover something that you have a question about, you can email me at sherry@wrinkledrunner.com, and I will do my best to give you any specific information that I can about your question. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you know another runner who could benefit from today's topic, go ahead and share it. Do you have any running questions? You can ask me. Email me at sherry@wrinkledrunner.com, and if I can't answer your question, I will do the research to find the answer and share it with you. The questions I get from listeners like you help me develop episodes, so please don't be shy. You can sign up for my once-a-month newsletter using the link provided so that you can have all the Wrinkled Runner resources from the past month all in one place. I also have opened up my virtual coaching in addition to coaching one-on-one with those in the Buffalo, New York area. So head to my coaching page on the Wrinkled Runner website, which I will, of course, link to, and check out how we may be able to work together. Until next Monday, thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the run.